All right, this is Brad French. This is week 11, Political and Legal Foundations of Fire Protection. This week's topic is the FLSA, or the Fair Labor Standards Act. I'll review a couple of things from the textbook from this week. Some background on the FLSA. It was passed back in 1938 during the Great Depression. The idea of the FLSA was that it limited the amount of work hours that employers could require their employees to work, with the idea being that it would spur more hiring. If they could limit the number of hours that each employee could work, and they were required to pay overtime, time and a half, to anybody working over 40 hours. So, and obviously, we still have that time and a half provision that survives still today and is known throughout the country. There are a couple of specific provisions as it relates to FLSA, I should say. That are applicable to our business because we work a little bit different schedule, a little bit of a non-traditional type schedule, not the typical Monday through Friday 8 to 5 kind of thing like a lot of the rest of the world does. So with our law enforcement and fire protection provision, the special rules are that for firefighters, overtime is earned after working over 53 hours in a week, or the equivalent of that, which is 212 hours in any 28-day period. So FLSA requires firefighter overtime to start at 53 hours. That's per the federal law. Now, if there's some type of alteration as a result of a collective bargaining agreement or something like that, as is the case in my department, lesser hours than that could result in overtime, depending upon what you've agreed upon with your particular jurisdiction or municipality. And then EMS provision as it relates to FLSA. EMS providers, sole role EMS providers, are entitled to overtime at anything over 40 hours if they are EMS specific positions, which we have in the Dayton Fire Department, and I'll talk a little bit more about later. One of the interesting case studies from the textbook this week was Cedric Cleveland versus the City of Los Angeles. This was a class action suit, meaning many folks were represented, and it just kind of fell under him as the lead plaintiff. But Cedric Cleveland versus the City of Los Angeles, it involved 119 cross-trained paramedic firefighters, but their primary function was with EMS. The plaintiff's contention was that they should be paid for any paid overtime for any hours worked over 40 hours as a result of the fact that they were primarily EMS. And the FLSA applicability to EMS. However, the City of Los Angeles contended that since they were cross-trained, since they were actually also firefighters, their overtime would be calculated for the same as the rest of the standard issue regular firefighters, which followed the 212 hours in a 28-day period. But again, the plaintiff's contention was that although they are cross-trained firefighter medics, they're not used in any type of firefighting capacity. They ride the medics all the time. They don't routinely respond to fires. They don't routinely function at fires. And they felt their argument was that the 40-hour provision should apply to them as opposed to the 212-28 provision for the rest of the fire department. That was their argument. The court found in favor of them, and they had a $5 million judgment that was leveled in their favor. So that was an interesting case study as it relates to fire versus EMS and FLSA. Very interesting to me, primarily because in the Dayton Fire Department we have sole role or civilian EMS providers, both EMTs and paramedics, to where that's all they do. We have about 50. We hired these folks as a result of a firefighter hiring freeze that we went through, and had a long period of time where we weren't allowed to hire firefighters by a Department of Justice federal lawsuit. Therefore, we ended up hiring civilian sole role EMT and paramedics just to ride the medic units. Per our collective bargaining agreement with the City of Dayton, our union contract, they work 40 hours. They're scheduled for 40 hours, and obviously per FLSA standards, anything above that, they would be entitled to overtime. On some weeks, they work a 24-hour shift and a 16-hour shift, and they can opt, if they so choose, to work the additional 8 hours in that 16-hour shift for a 24-24 that week and get their additional 8 hours of overtime. And then some weeks, the weeks that would consist of a Monday and then a Thursday and a Sunday, they're actually required per the contract to work 2 24s with a built-in guaranteed 8 hours overtime on one of those days. And then the third day of that 3-day work week would be an EDO, an earned day off, as a lot of the rest of the fire department gets through the collective bargaining agreement as well. During their 24/16 weeks, 24-hour shift and then a 16-hour shift in which they can opt to work the additional 8 if they want, they can take that time as either comp time or overtime money. However, with their 24/24 weeks, where they'll have a 24-hour shift, a 24-hour shift again with a guaranteed built-in 8 hours, and then an EDO, they have to take the additional 8 hours in their second 24 as money as opposed to comp time. As I said, the Monday, Thursday, Sunday. Monday at 0700 is when we consider the work week to begin, and therefore Monday, Thursday, Sunday are their long weeks. Tuesday, Friday, or Wednesday, Saturday are the short weeks in which they can opt to work the additional 8 hours overtime as they want. As a company officer, I have a medic unit in my station, and so I kind of need to be up on this stuff so I can make sure that I'm entering them in the appropriate manner, the appropriate hours for overtime, and things like that on the weeks, the appropriate days on the appropriate weeks in the appropriate way, so it's in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement and with the FLSA law. So I actually found this chapter to be relatively interesting because it was very applicable to the operations of my particular fire department. So thanks for listening, and I'll check out everybody else's videos, and have a good day.